A rusted locomotive vanished for 70 years, then whispered about in village kitchens and wartime archives. A train that some insist carried fortunes looted in the last frantic days of a collapsing empire. Imagine a single line of cars packed with crates of gold bars, silver coins, family heirlooms, and priceless artworks, sealed in a hillside tunnel while the world outside exploded in violence and confusion. For decades, it was a rumor, a ghost story told between borders, until one claimed a metal detector, a spot on a map, and suddenly the story was back in headlines as people questioned whether the gold train ever existed, and if it did, where its treasure went. At the end of World War II, as front lines collapsed and borders were redrawn, the movement of people and property became a fog of desperation. Soldiers disappeared into the countryside. Officials attempted last-minute evacuations, and private citizens hid what they could to keep it from chaos. Among the most haunting tales that emerged was the idea of a train loaded with looted treasure and hurried westward. Then, concealed in the rugged terrain of Lower Silesia, whether myth or fact, the story taps into something deeper than metal and money, because it reflects families stripped of heirlooms, communities left with empty rooms, and a continent forced to reconcile theft and restitution in the shadow of mass violence. Records from the period are incomplete or contradictory, manifest lists missing, transports interrupted, and eyewitnesses scattered, while fragments of testimony from farmers or railway workers turned into a legend. In villages where the train was rumored to have passed, older residents still recall the night trains, sealed freight cars, and soldiers shouting in a language half remembered, giving fuel to the belief that something extraordinary moved through the dark. The story lay dormant for decades until a modern claim reignited the search. A pair of treasure hunters announced they had pinpointed the train's location using maps, metal detectors, and local tips, describing strange readings and metallic anomalies beneath a cobbled hillside. Their claim generated headlines, stirred authorities, and ignited a fierce debate about whether this was the long-lost train or a modern illusion born of sensationalism. Academics urged caution, reminding the public that radar anomalies could reflect natural geology or modern debris. And ethical questions emerged about digging at a site that might contain human remains. Descendants of victims, however, felt a surge of hope that a discovery could answer questions and lead to restitution, turning an archaeological inquiry into high-stakes drama filled with press conferences, lawsuits, and competing narratives. When treasure becomes headline news, science is expected to deliver certainty. But science has limits, especially after decades of disturbance. Ground-penetrating radar can reveal shapes of metal underground but cannot always distinguish between scrap, tools, or precious metals. Survey teams tested the claims, and some readings suggested linear anomalies consistent with railway infrastructure, while others pointed to natural mineral deposits. Legal and bureaucratic obstacles complicated matters because excavation would require state approval, archaeological oversight, and guarantees that any artifacts or remains would be handled respectfully. Meanwhile, opportunists began circling, including amateur treasure hunters, families with old rumors passed down like treasure maps, and entrepreneurs offering tours and consultancy, turning the story into a marketplace of speculation. Behind all of this are people whose lives were shaped by what vanished. Survivors and descendants remember pieces of family history, a wedding ring salvaged from rubble, a ledger listing items now missing, a grandmother's warning to hide valuables. For them, the story is not abstract. It is painful and personal. The pursuit of treasure raises ethical questions about disturbing sites tied to trauma and whether restitution can be meaningful if artifacts re-enter a market instead of being returned to families or museums. In some corners, the hunt has reopened tensions between nations and allowed accusations of hiding evidence or obstructing searches, while in local communities, investigators and journalists altered social dynamics, bringing visitors who wanted a story and leaving behind suspicion. As historians debate the evidence, alternative theories emerge, suggesting that the gold train may not have been a single dramatic transport, but an amalgamation of multiple shipments, smaller caches hidden by families or valuables transported west and dispersed during the disintegration of the Nazi system. Another possibility is that salvage operations in the immediate post-war years, opportunistic looting, and the conversion of precious metal into bullion erased any trace of the treasure. Each scenario changes the nature of the search, because if the cargo was dispersed and melted down, there is nothing to excavate. But memory, while a sealed train, would have vast implications, legally, historically, and emotionally. What complicates judgment is how easily evidence can be misinterpreted in the heat of expectation. With a glint in a photograph becoming gold, or a note in a ledger treated as proof, scholars argue that the best path forward is careful, transparent research that prioritizes archival work, forensic methods, and cooperation among nations and communities, though even that may lead to partial truths rather than cinematic treasure. Whether or not a train of bullion sleeps beneath a Polish hillside, the legend illuminates something crucial about memory and justice. The obsession with hidden treasure is not only about wealth, but about restoring a past fractured by violence and theft. For some, the search is a quest to recover what was taken. For others, it is a way to rewrite identity. The limits of evidence force people to confront how history is constructed from official records, rumor, testimony, and community stories. In the end, the most important discoveries may not be shiny objects, but documents that restore a name to a ledger, artifacts that reconnect families to a lost narrative, and the slow work of acknowledging wrongs so restitution becomes possible. The gold train, real, imagined, or somewhere in between, acts as a mirror, asking whether societies value truth enough to tolerate uncertainty, and whether the pursuit of treasure can be transformed into a search for reckoning. You can picture the hill in silence, the tracks weathered, the earth settled, and the story resisting a single dramatic ending, yet revealing what matters most: memory, dignity, and the long, difficult work of setting history right.